Send you absolutely free this information kit, including 10 secrets to buying, selling, and renting timeshares. Timeshares Only is the nation's largest, #1 most successful timeshare agency.
We represent properties from the biggest names in the timeshare industry.
When it comes to selling, renting, or buying timeshares, no one comes close to Timeshares Only.
With over $2 billion of timeshares sold in the last 6 months, now's the perfect time to sell, rent, or buy. And no one sells more timeshares than we do.
You owe it to yourself to work with the best. Timeshares Only, the most trusted name in timeshares.
Call 800-311-0401 to turn your timeshare into cash and get your free information kit. Call 800-311-0401.
On the next Mastermind.
The biggest robbery in the United Kingdom.
When armed robbers couldn't crack a safe, they stumbled onto something even bigger.
An absolute fortune on the floor.
Plus, the New York fashion scene, glitz, glamour, and the perfect setting for a brilliant thief.
It's on Cincinnati's 38 tonight.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to Lincoln Ware Live. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11. And as usual, we've got a great show lined up for you today. The first half of the show, we're going to talk DNA. Who's the baby's daddy? I don't know. We'll find out the process of all that coming up. We've got the DNA Diagnostic Center, and we'll talk to them the first half of the show. Second half of the show, Dr. Odell Owens, the Hamilton County Coroner. Boy, that's a tough job. Your whole life is centered around death. What a job that must be. We'll talk to him about the suicide rate in Hamilton County, the murder rate in Hamilton County, and whatever else is on your mind. We'll talk to him on the second half of the show. But first, let's get started with our guest, the first half, Dr. Baird. He's the man that decided who was Anna Nicole Smith's baby's daddy. He's the man who decided that. Also, you watch Maury Povich. He's the man that tells you who's the baby's daddy on Maury Povich. He finds all that information out. Dr. Baird, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lincoln.
And Jim Hanigan, I guess you're like the public relations guy. You're the man that puts the word out about the DNA Diagnostic Center. And it's right here in Hamilton County, in Fairfield.
That's
Actually,
right.
Not in Hamilton, it's in Butler County, in Fairfield, right in our backyard. And you do DNA tests from all over the world.
That's right.
Now, okay, let's start with you, Jim. How long have you been here in Hamilton County?
We opened up DNA Diagnostic Center in Fairfield in 1995.
In 95. Now, you've done some high case DNA testing. I guess the most notable, the Anna Nicole Smith case. You guys had to go down to Florida, take the results down, and stand before the judge to verify.
Bahamas.
Yeah, but it was unbelievable, unbelievable. Now, Dr. Baird, you're the man that gets behind the microscope and decides out who is the baby's daddy. I mean, how did you get into this business?
Well, I got into this business basically through training and education. I got my degree in genetics from University of Chicago, and I was fascinated in using DNA for that purpose. And this is back before any companies really existed in doing this identification testing. And I was, lucky enough to be one of the pioneers to help develop this for both paternity and forensics.
And speaking of paternity, I guess this month is National Child Support Month. And I guess Jobs and Family Services are offering some type of amnesty to guys that are behind on their child support that lost their driver's license. Now, a lot of guys are out there, and I get calls from them all the time, and feel free to call us this morning at 513-381-3838 if you have any questions about paternity and the DNA testing. Now, there is a period that if you don't get this done early on, that if you find out maybe 10 years later that you're not the child, you're still responsible. There's some laws that say that. Who wants to elaborate on that?
Sure, I'll jump in a little bit. When a child is born out of wedlock at the hospital, they'll try to get the parents, especially the father, to sign an acknowledgement of paternity. And you have about 60 days to go back and try to rescind that. If you change your mind for some reason, you find out certain things, you've got 60 days to administratively go back and try to get that changed. Now, after that 60 days, then you really have about a year to get a genetic test, which is what we do, to try to overturn that first acknowledgement.
And if you don't do that and you just let things ride, and then later on you find out that you're not, they can still hold you responsible.
They can, and they do. After a year, yes, the courts have to look at the best interest of the child, and then it's a gray area. They can decide different things per judge.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's fair for a guy. Maybe somehow he didn't know, and then all of a sudden he finds out, but he's still got to pay those child support payments. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there watching this show right now, and we want to hear your stories at 513-381-3838. We want to hear your stories out there on how maybe, you know, DNA testing could have helped you. And how long does it normally take? It's so simple and easy to get.
It's a very easy test to do anymore. The sample that we require is what's called a cheek swab sample. It's like taking a Q-tip and rubbing the inside of a person's cheek. So it's really, there's no pain involved. You don't have to draw blood anymore, things like that. The test itself takes about 3 to 5 days. So it's a very fast test to deliver the results. And I would certainly encourage people to have this test done immediately after a child is born. And that way you establish a relationship and you can make decisions on that.
All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll give you a chance to jump on board at 513-381-3838. That's the number. Lincoln Ware Live on the air. Coming up the second half of the show, Dr. Odell Owens, the Hamilton County Coroner. We'll take a quick break and we'll come right back and we'll take your calls. 513-381-3838. Back in a moment. We're back live, Lincoln Ware Live. We're talking DNA Diagnostic Center, and they're right here in Fairfield. And they're doing, I mean, the amount of children born out of wedlock is just skyrocketing. And you were giving me some stats off air there?
Yeah, one of the stats I was just telling you was that the AABB, which is the organization that accredits laboratories for parentage testing, keeps track of the number of child support cases done annually. And their last count was over 400,000 done in a year in the U.S.
Wow. And I know I saw some stats in the African-American community alone, it was something like 70% of the babies born are born out of wedlock. So naturally, that's going to send the DNA testing up also, because a lot of people just want to be sure.
Well, absolutely. And that's the nice thing about DNA. It really gives you an absolute. It tells you whether you are or are not the biological father of a child.
All right, let's go to the telephones. Let's start things off this morning with grandmother. How you doing, grandmother?
I'm fine, and you?
Good.
This is what I'd like to know. Supposing you got a grandchild that was born in wedlock, and the man found out that it's not his child. So what do? He still has to pay child support, and it's over a year, and she's been tipping. And they've been married past 5 years.
Yeah, what happens if it's a married couple and, you know?
Well, that's a good question. I think, you know, with a married couple, my understanding is that the presumption is that the husband is the biological father. And he would then have to do genetic testing to show that he was not the biological father. And again, there's probably a time period for that, too.
There is, but he's probably going to have to pay. It really comes down to what the judge feels is the less disruptive and the best interest of the child.
Because now, does the mother have to has to come bring the child also? Can the father just say, "Oh, we're going out to get some ice cream," and come up to the DNA Diagnostic Center and get a test done? Does the mother have to give the approval for that?
That's a very good question, and there has to be approval by the guardian of the child in order to get the testing done,
Okay, so
or the parents.
Father could say, "I'm the father, we're married, I'm the guardian," and he could do it without the mother's knowledge.
Absolutely, and you could do a very powerful test without the mother being involved. It's better to have the mother involved because then you know her contribution genetically to the child, but you can certainly do a DNA test for paternity without the mother.
All right, let's go back to the thanks for your call.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's go to Lee. Lee, good morning, how are you? Lee. Okay, guess we lost Lee. Let's go to line 4. Okay, D, how are you?
I'm fine. I have a question.
Yes.
Now, when you're doing the DNA testing, if the woman comes in and has the wrong father, who has to pay for that test? And also, if you have it done in a hospital, do your health insurance cover it?
Well, I would say that my understanding is that most health insurance do not cover this kind of testing, paternity testing. The testing needs to be done by one party or the other, and generally that's established up front when the case is first brought in.
And now, okay, and you was asking if you had to, if you find out that this person is not the father, you still have to pay for the test regardless. I mean, you're getting results, so you have to pay for the test.
Yeah, there's no guarantee what the test result's going to be, but you got to pay for the testing.
Right.
Yes.
And just since we got you guys out early this morning, we're going to give if they dial 881-4040 and just mention my name, you'll give them $100 off the DNA test.
That's right. Our normal fee is $475. If they call and mention you on that special line, the 881-4040, and we do have people in the office today who are taking calls. They're probably in the office now. Then they'll give them a special discount.
Now, on the Anna Nicole Smith, was that? I mean, you probably never seen so much media frenzy on the, the paternity of the Anna Nicole, case. What was that about?
It was pretty intense, I must admit. Normally I'm a quiet person. I work in the laboratory, give my results out, and no one really seems to care much one way or the other. But in this case, there was media everywhere, and Jim was down there with me for a couple of these instances, and basically you walk out and there's cameras in your face, people with microphones in your face wanting comments, etc. It's kind of an uncomfortable situation for a scientist to be in.
Now, did you have you had DNA from Anna Nicole? Did you have her DNA also?
Yeah, we did. We ultimately got a sample from Anna Nicole from the coroner down, Dr. Perper down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay.
And we used that plus the DNA from her child, Danny Lynn, and Larry Burkhead.
Okay, and you didn't actually need her DNA to prove that he was the father, did you?
No, we didn't need it, but it was a nice control to have, basically, to make sure that we had the right baby. I think there was some concern whether or not there might be a switch of the baby.
Oh, okay.
And by having Anna Nicole's sample, we could establish that it was her baby.
Okay, switching the baby. And when people come out to get the DNA from you, they have to have a picture, photo ID, and the whole bit so that somebody won't send the wrong guy out there.
Well, that's a very important point. The kind of testing that we offer is what's called chain of custody testing. And this testing, the individuals involved need to establish who they are and provide documentation of that, either a photograph or a government ID, driver's license, things like that. And with that information, you can then take that result into a court, and then the court will accept that. Unlike other kinds of tests that are typically offered at a lower price, but they don't have that chain of custody in it.
All right, let's go back to the telephones. I believe Lee is back. Lee, how are you? Lee.
No, it's not Lee, it's Fred.
Okay, they said Lee was on 3, but go ahead, Fred. We'll talk to you. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing fine. Listen, I talked to you about this about 2 years ago, Lincoln, where that, okay, I was married to this woman. Okay, we got a divorce, right?
Yes.
But I had 2 kids by her. So, about a couple years after divorce, she tell me now one of them is mine.
And you were still paying child support?
Yes, well, wait a minute, hear me out. So she went to court with me and told the judge and gave the judge the problem who was the kids was, and the judge, he pleaded with me. He said, I'm sorry it happened to you, and blah, blah. And then he sent me a letter about 2 months later saying I got to take care of him anyway. Now, I've been taking care of him ever since. Here it is about 28 years later.
Yeah, well, see.
Still on that.
See, I guess you got behind on your rearage, and they're still making you catch up with that, even though the kids are grown, right?
Yeah, but no, that's not what I'm saying.
But you're upset because even after she told them they weren't your kids, you still had to pay.
Right, no, you're not listening to that. I'm still paying child support for a kid that's not mine. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, and how old are they?
One, he's got to be, what, about 28 or close to 20.
So why, were you behind in the payments and they're making you catch up, or what? I mean, because why are you still making payments and the kids are 28?
No.
Unless you were behind on your rearage so far that they're just making you pay that on off, and, no matter how long it takes.
No, you ain't listening to me. Ain't now one of the kids is mine.
We know that because you were not able to go back, and the judge said, okay, you've had them all this time. The time limit had passed, I guess, and they said they're your kids. So.
But I didn't know that, though.
But, I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles for these guys out here. I mean, like you said, the time limit had passed.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to have this test done early.
Yeah.
And if you have a test done when the child is born, you can establish that.
Okay, ask the guy, if you asked the judge about taking the test and they said no, so is that legal?
Probably so. The time limit had expired and, you know, he was stuck.
Yeah, unfortunately that happens a lot, and that's kind of where the science and the law differ. I mean, the science can come up with an answer whether or not someone is the biological father or not of a child.
At any time.
At any time, but the law has certain limits in terms of when that can be presented to the court.
All right, let's go back to the telephones, 513-381-3838. Let's go to Ken. Ken, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Lincoln.
What's on your mind?
Hey, I got a question I've been trying to get an answer for 2 years. What if you pay for your child, say, the whole 20-year process, and you paid your arrears, but then there comes a time they send you a letter saying the child is emancipated, and they're still taking out the check. How do you have to go through the mother, like they told me, as far as taking to court to get the money back?
Well, okay, explain that again. You're still paying the arrearage.
No, everything's all paid, but I've come to find out that since the child's been emancipated, the letter they sent me, they were still taking out my check, garnishing out my check.
Wow, that's crazy. You need to go downtown and talk to somebody in child support to have that stopped.
It stopped. It's been stopped about a year now, but I can't seem to get my money that I owe.
Oh, that's probably going to be real tough. Once they get that money, they don't let it go easy.
You may need a lawyer.
It's all paid up.
You may need to get a lawyer to put some pressure on them.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks for your call. Let's move along, 513-381-3838. Jerry?
Yes?
How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Pretty good.
Oh, I was just going to ask, my daughter's father, he's from Texas, and they've had a hard time trying to get a DNA test done because he can't, he moves around a lot. So I was wondering if there was a family member willing to do a DNA, could they do that from another family member?
Well, that's a good question. It's not recommended to do it.
Like a half brother or sister.
Yeah, it's not recommended to do a test like that because it doesn't really establish whether or not the person in question could be the biological father.
Okay.
And I'll just say a little more on that. Basically, people that are related to an alleged father can be used to help reconstruct what his genetic profile would be. But it also assumes that the people in question are related as they say they are, which oftentimes they're not.
Yeah, I just wanted to, she's 18 now, but I can still pursue it.
Well, and you guys, no matter where in the country you are, you've got satellite offices around, and you can just, if you find out what city he's in Texas, you can tell them where they need to go to get the test done. They send it out to you, and it's just that simple. So if you can get him to go into one of their offices around the country, you can get it done.
Yeah, well, he'll probably have to be court ordered to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for your call. Yeah, so you can't use a brother or a sister or...
Sometimes they'll do that if the person's deceased, if they have no other option.
Okay.
Yeah. But if the person's just unwilling, then that won't work in court.
Yeah, because the problem is genetically that people can be related as full siblings, and sometimes they don't share any DNA in common at the locations that we look at. So it's a matter of chance in terms of whether they share the same, what we call alleles or genetic factors that the child got from the biological father. And if they don't, it looks like they may not be related, and they could be.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with more DNA and who's the baby's daddy right here on Lincoln Ware Live. We'll take a break, and we'll come back and take your calls at 513-381-3838. We'll be back in a moment. And we're back live. Lincoln Ware Live is the program. Dr. Baird, Jim Hanigan from the DNA Diagnostic Center in Fairfield. 881-4040 is the number you want to call. And if you mention my name, you get $100 off. And let's go back to the telephone. Let's go to Gwen. Gwen, good morning. You're on Lincoln Ware Live. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good.
Great. first thing I want to say is that they need to consider all factors when they're making these decisions, not just, you know, the child is important, but that should not just be the only factor. They should consider the other parent. Do they look at who's the other parent and if they should pay?
Oh, well, yeah, that's like a child support, domestic relations type issue there, but and we're going to have those people on before the end of the month is over, so keep watching, and you'll be able to throw those questions at them. But mainly this morning, we're talking DNA and how do you get the testing done, and is it accurate? I know I've seen some of on my radio show, we had people come in and I revealed the results to them, and it says 99.99999. Have you ever had any that says like 98 or 90 or 89?
No.
Okay.
The reports that we issue will either be 99.9 if it's an inclusion or 0 if it's an exclusion.
Okay. All right, let's go to Renee. Renee, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
I have two questions. The first question I would like to ask is, when you're with, when you have a child, can you test one of the family members if the father cannot be found? The biological father cannot be found. Can you test one of his family members to find out if it's really his child or not?
Well, that's a good question. I think we covered that a little bit earlier in terms of the relatives. There are some kinds of tests that can be done that are quite helpful. One is called a YSTR test. So in other words, if it's a male child that's in question, you can determine whether or not the male child has a common male lineage if there are any other male relatives of the alleged father. And that, again, is not definitive in terms of the identification of the father, but it's certainly suggestive if they're in the same family or not. Yeah. If they're not, you're then back in the situation of trying to test relatives and trying to put the pieces back together of what the alleged father might look like. If you have the parents of the alleged father, both mother and father of the alleged father, you can do a very powerful test for grandparentage, for sure.
Okay, so you get the grandparents in there, and then that'll help out a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
And the second question that I needed to ask was dead relatives. I have a problem with something that happened a long time ago, but the parent died, supposedly parent died, and the daughter need testing. What do you do? Does it cost more to have some kind of testing, or can it be done?
Well, what about the grandparents? Are they still living?
No, they're deceased.
Okay.
They have brothers and sisters that are still alive.
Well, you can always do tests with the remaining people that are alive to determine whether or not they have anything in common. And again, we have the ability to look at a lot of different places in the DNA in order to establish a relationship, and sometimes it is helpful. The other thing I might also suggest too is that you can always perhaps think about exhuming remains of an individual and do a test on their DNA directly from a deceased individual.
All right, thanks for your call. Let's move along. 513-381-3838. Sharon, good morning. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Okay, I had a two-part question.
Okay, turn your TV down. Turn your TV down.
Turn the TV down. Frazier, turn it down.
It's confusing.
I wanted to know, okay, if I have a child and he's like in the custody of the grandparents, okay, why is one parent liable to pay all the child support and he's on disability?
Okay, that's a case for the child support people.
Oh, okay.
And I'll have them in before the month's over.
Oh, okay, and then...
Because this is National Child Support Month. How about that?
Oh, okay, that's great.
So we'll answer all those questions. Do you have a DNA question?
Oh, yes. Okay. What's the word? What else?
Okay, well, call me back later.
Just a minute. Wait a minute. Hold up. Here it is.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if a child is incarcerated, are you still liable to pay child support?
That's still a child support question.
Oh.
And I'll have those people in before the end of the month. Unbelievable. Let's move along. 513. We're here to answer your DNA questions. But child support issues can come in through the DNA issue. But she was asking questions specifically for the child support people, which I'll have on the show later in the month. All right. Now, do you, this is National Child Support Month, do you see a spike in DNA testing, you think, or?
Well, I've seen an increase over the years. And again, based on the number I gave before, 400,000 a year child support cases, that's been increasing about 10% a year for the last 10 years.
Wow. And so I guess that's all goes to show that it's not a whole, I mean, people do get divorced and you have child support cases, but so many babies are being born out of wedlock. And that's where the paternity testing really comes in, because they're born out of wedlock and the father's going to question whether he is the father or not.
I think that's very true, and also it lends to the power of the test that's available today. You can establish unequivocally whether you are or are not the biological parent.
All right, we're just about out of time. We've got time for one more call, and no one's on line 2. Line 3, maybe? Okay, let's go to Michelle. Michelle, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Pretty good. You're the final caller. What's your question?
Good to save the best for last.
All right.
Okay, my fiance, my baby's father, she's 3 now. We had a DNA test done, and she is his daughter. Since then, last October, he's deceased. He had been paying child support on another child in Arizona from Ohio, in which he thought that the child was not his. And now that he's deceased, and now that this child is out in Arizona, is there any way that I could do anything to see if that child is his? He's paying Social Security-like benefits to the child.
Well,
but he thought that the child was never his, but he didn't get to get the DNA done.
It certainly becomes more difficult when the alleged father is deceased. And like I say, you have the option, I don't know whether the child is male or female. If it's male, you might want to look at some YSTR typing. If the alleged father has other relatives, male relatives that are available, that would at least see whether or not it's possible for him to be the biological father.
Now, could they check her daughter against that other, the other child?
I would not recommend that as a definitive test. Again, the parents of the deceased alleged father could be used to do testing with that other child to see whether or not they were the grandparents. Adopted. Okay. Well, you're making it difficult.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, I tell you what, you guys, we have to get you back again because there's so many questions surrounding DNA. They had a big article in the Inquirer earlier in the week about DNA, paternity testing, and how there was a time limit and how these guys were still having to pay because they didn't get it done within the time limit. So I know you guys are going to stay busy and get busier and busier. Give that phone number once again, Jim, that people can call and get a discount.
It's 513, so it's a local number. It's 881-4040.
881-4040. Call that line and mention me, and they'll give you $100 off the DNA test, and that's got to help.
Sure.
Thank you for spending time out, taking time from church to come in here with me this morning. You're dressed, ready to go. Just step out of here and go to church.
Absolutely.
Sure will. Thank you for joining me.
All right, thanks, Lincoln.
We'll be back with Dr. Odell Owens in a moment. And we're back live. Lincoln Ware Live is the program. And my guest this morning, I mean, he's on TV more than the newsman. He makes the news. Dr. Odell Owens, Hamilton County Coroner. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, man.
All right. You've been busy a lot lately. I mean, if it's not murder, it's suicide.
It's been a horrible week.
Oh, and that suicide rate is just, people just don't realize how many people commit suicide that it never hits the news.
Well, suicides have always occurred more than homicides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in 2001, we had 40 or 50 homicides. For the last 15 years, we've always had over 100 suicides a year, but no one ever talks about it.
And when the coroner talks about it, people say he shouldn't talk about that. Why is that? I mean, people were saying that you shouldn't get on TV and say, give your opinion as to why you think a person committed suicide. Why do they say that?
Well, again, there's this whole taboo about suicides. And my issue, and I challenge everybody, Lincoln, I give talks in schools. I asked a group of kids the other day, I asked them, give me the phone number for child abuse. They all knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them could give me the phone number for LaRosa Pizza,
mm-hmm.
but none could tell me about the suicide hotline.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we have more suicides than homicides. So by not talking about it, families then don't pick up the early warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed when I go to a scene and you find someone has committed suicide. The family said, well, last night he said this, and he was going through the album. He said, I will always love you, and this and that. And you say, that's consistent. That you need to say, wait a minute, something's not right. Let me spend more time with this individual. Let me get this individual some help.
Now, how does a guy like you go home and sleep at night after you go to a murder scene, a murder-suicide scene, just like the one the other day? She had an X. She marked an X on the kid.
On the girl.
And how could you, I mean, you go in there and you see this. Does that take a toll on you after a while?
Well, it does. You know, I told people that night that that was one of the worst scenes I've been to. Not gruesome scenes. I've seen worse gruesome scenes, but emotional scenes. To walk into a room, see a mother on the floor, see her two beautiful children in bed, and the fact that she put the gun right on their chest and shot them twice. That's what really got to me. But, you know, Lincoln, the next day I gave a talk in Independence, Kentucky to 225 teachers. And the superintendent, after the talk, they gave me this tremendous standing ovation. And he said, you know, we need you this week because we're starting school. We need to hear your message about education and violence. Then he turned to me and said, but based on this week, you needed us today. And that's true.
Yeah.
By them showing that love to me and that appreciation, that uplifts me. And that keeps me going. So when I go to schools and kids appreciate or they send me a letter, that keeps me going.
And more suicides happen in the suburbs than the inner city.
Well, let's put it in this perspective. In 2006, not one black female committed suicide in Hamilton County. Not one. 2005, one. So yes, your suicides are in the suburbs. If you go and look at 2005, when Over the Rhine was the hub of homicides, no suicides in Over the Rhine. Now people find that just unbelievable.
We'll kill you, but we won't kill ourselves.
No, and people who have to live and struggle. If you're talking about living in struggle, then go down to Over the Rhine, some of these other neighborhoods. People have to struggle to live. They got to deal with the rats, the roaches, the landlord, afraid to go outside. If their kids are getting beat up, robbed, you're afraid to even step out your door or send your kids down the street. Do not commit suicide.
Now, and you were talking about the how we tie DNA together with you were saying how on homicides, a lot of homicides.
On every homicide case, we save some DNA. And we will get, on every case, almost 2 or 3 inquiries from individuals asking us to send the DNA to Dr. Baird so they can do paternity testing, because there's a victim's fund, and they can get money, and probably in some cases even Social Security benefits. Now, the victim's fund, you can get money as long as the victim did not have drugs in their system.
Okay, if they've got drugs in their system, you don't get anything.
You don't get anything.
All right, 513-381-3838. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and let you talk to the Hamilton County Coroner, Dr. Odell Owens. We'll take a quick break and come right back. 513-381-3838. We'll be back in a moment. We're back live. Lincoln Ware Live is the program. Talking to my good friend, Dr. Odell Owens, Woodward High School graduate. No, where did you graduate? Woodward, yeah, that's right. Woodward High School graduate. So go Bulldogs. All right, we'll give you a chance to talk to the coroner. Let's start things off with Helen. Helen, how are you?
All right.
What's your question?
My daughter was murdered on the 2nd of January. And on her coroner's report, it says she had an incise wound of the ventral neck, incising the right internal jugular vein and the right lobe of the thyroid with the exsanguination.
Okay.
I want to know, what is the exsanguination? Did she bleed inward, or was it just
exsanguination? Just means you're bleeding outward. Exsanguination means that you pour a lot of blood out of the vessel. Outward? Yes, it's blood coming out of the artery or the vein.
Okay.
Okay, and what is the ELISA? What is that? What kind of testing is that?
ELISA test, that's a screening test. That's toxicology, where we do a screening test on all homicide victims. And the ELISA is a screening test looking for cocaine, marijuana, things like that.
Okay. Thanks for your call. Let's go to Queen. Queen, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning. I was just wanted to call and thank you, Dr. Odell, for still doing a great job. No matter what you do, you exceed at it. And I hope you keep going and get, all of your hopes. I hope dreams come true with you trying to get these teenagers together and the killings and everything. So I'm just called to congratulate.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for your call.
All right, then, gentlemen. Have a good one.
All righty. Now, do you have any other political aspirations you think maybe,
people ask me that all the time, and I tell them no. People say, well, being coroner is not glamorous. Being coroner doesn't seem to be ambitious. But when you want to serve the public, it's not about glamour. It's about impact. From the coroner's office, I can drive education, which is my #1 interest. I can drive economic development, give these young people jobs, and we'll cut down on the violence. I can drive race relationships. I can drive health issues. So right now, at this point, I will probably run again. I'm satisfied. I don't need that I got to be a congressman or a governor. I think Mark Mallory is doing a great job, and I support Mark Mallory in his bid to be mayor again. And I think he's the right person for Cincinnati at the right time.
Yeah, you're right. And you say you'll probably run again for coroner?
Probably. I haven't made a final decision, but...
I mean, I tell you, whoever comes in behind you, if there's ever he's going to have some big shoes to fill because you have changed the coroner's office totally. It's not like it used to be.
But it's about diversity. I look at this as diversity, and that is that as an African-American taking that job at that time, I brought a different historical perspective and a different social agenda. When the coroner's office gets its first female coroner, has never had a female coroner, she will bring a different historical perspective and a different agenda. A year from now, I'm going to be elected president of the International Coroners Association because I am the first vice president now. And what I've done, even with that organization, is trying to change that office, make it more about life than death.
Yeah.
And we can have that kind of influence, then I'm happy.
All right, let's go to Melanie. Melanie, how you doing?
Hi, I'm fine today. How are you?
Pretty good.
Hello, Dr. Owens.
Good morning.
I have a two-part request for you. The first is actually dealing with DNA in the last section. There's a common misconception, especially among poor people, that a child has to look like, especially the father, for it to be theirs. And I'd like for you to dispel that quickly. And the second, I would like for you to, the young man who beat his girlfriend to death and ultimately killed her child, killed their child. On the buzz, I listened to one of the talk shows, and she said she had a little bit of sympathy for this person because he said he didn't want another man raising his child. Can you please kind of drive home the point to these people of, I guess, the magnitude of what he had to do to hurt this child, to crack this child's skull in utero, so that maybe they can kind of get away from the whole, okay, well, he's a victim too, this, that, and the other. I kind of would like to drive that home. What he had to do to crack this child's skull.
And don't those people just drive you crazy that say they have sympathy for this guy? Don't they just drive you crazy? That's why I have to take high blood pressure medicine now. When you get these calls, well, you have to feel sorry for the guy because, I don't want to hear that crap. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, she's right. It takes a lot of force. And this young girl had footprints all over her body to smash the uterus, to fracture the skull of that baby whose name is Precious. But what I do want to say is that Precious' body is still in the morgue. The mother did not have any money to bury her, and therefore the body has not been claimed. They were going to cremate it, again, no service. I mentioned that in my last news conference, and a business from Indiana has donated some money that she may get a burial.
Okay.
The sad part is I wish people from the inner city who share that kind of pain would have contributed. I wish 1,000 of your listeners had given a $1 a piece.
Yeah.
I think that would have been more symbolic to me, that the people really care. But it's a shame that that baby remained in the morgue until now. But this wonderful family, business family, they live in Indiana, they got actually a business in Kentucky, have donated money, so she will get a funeral this week.
All right, let's go to Bernadette. Bernadette, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good. What's going on?
Dr. Odell.
Good morning.
We live in a society that tends to base everything on death. And I say that because there's so many walking dead, and a lot of people don't know that drugs is a slow suicide.
Right.
And overindulging in anything that intoxicates the mind to where you can't think straight is a slow suicide. And I wanted to ask Dr. Odell, do he pass out pamphlets to the children in schools and in the neighborhoods on a regular basis, or what does one have to do to get him to come and talk to the children in different areas?
Okay, thanks for your call.
Well, I'm so glad you've said that because, Bernadette, I have really struggled, and if I had my choice on every drug overdose death, I would put suicide. I would put suicide and not accidental if I had the choice. She's absolutely right. Because my sense is, we tell people, if you use drugs, it may kill you. So therefore, if you're willing to do that, to me, it is a suicide.
Yeah.
She's absolutely right. And I wish I had the guts that I could go against the national nomenclature in doing that. And maybe one day I will. But right now, when I give a talk, Bernadette, last year I spoke to 27,000 students. Every single talk, I've talked about suicides, and I've talked about drugs, the use of drugs, the age group. I break it down by ages. I break it down by the type of drugs. And I tell young kids, you know, you may start with marijuana, but most people progress to something far more dangerous than just simple marijuana. In fact, now marijuana is being dipped in embalming fluid and sold on the streets to give you a better high, but it's damaging your brain.
Let's go to DJ. DJ, how you doing?
I'm blessed, and you?
Pretty good.
I have a two-part bold question, but they were almost pretty much answered. The first one is Dr. Odell was talking about the low amount of suicide in the black community or in the impoverished communities.
Yes.
Okay, I've been a nurse and advocate for over 40 years. And don't you think that sometimes depression is a cause of suicide, which in other instances, the reason it may be a low number in the impoverished communities is because with their depression, they do, as the young lady just spoke, turn to drugs, prostitution, burglary, and other outward, untoward behaviors. And the second part, before I hang up, is I, too, would like to know how to reach you to have you speak to a large number of youth. And thank you, and keep up the good work. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for your call.
You know, Lincoln, she's right. There is a relationship between depression and suicide. The problem I have is that when I gave this talk to an academic community, psychiatrists, medical doctors, I mean, their sense is that, well, over the Rhine, people there are depressed. They see a lot of people there who are depressed. Part of it is that depression doesn't lead to suicide, and part of that depression that from their perspective may not be the same. You know, if you live in over the Rhine all your life, you second, third generation, there's certain things that you've learned to accept.
Could that type of depression lead to violence?
Well, it certainly can. I think any of that kind of depression, because what happens, I think that depression, you focus on today. You don't worry about tomorrow. It's all about today. In the suburbs, it's about tomorrow. Oh, how am I going to pay my bills? I don't have a job now. How am I going to pay for the car, the house, this? And they kill themselves. Or I got a medical problem, and they kill themselves. In the inner city, it is about that day. They can survive that day. They don't worry about tomorrow. It's that saying, and you know, tomorrow will take care of itself. I think it's a difference in philosophies.
All right, let's move along. Let's go to, I lost track of call line 4. Isha. Isha, how you doing? Isha is gone. Let's go to, okay, Renee?
Lene.
Lene, how you doing?
Yes, how you doing, Lincoln Ware?
Pretty good.
I just have a question for Dr. Odell, and it's going back to something he spoke about earlier, the Victims Fund for someone that's deceased as long as they had no drugs in their system. How do you find out about that? Because my granddaughter, her father died 2 days after Thanksgiving last year, and he never did work, so she's not eligible for, like, Social Security or anything like that. And I just wanted to find out about that Victims Fund and, you know, is there a phone number that I could call or anything like that?
Okay, it was a homicide, right?
No, it was just a mysterious death. He went to bed that night, and they found him dead the next morning.
The Victims Fund, my understanding, is for victims of violent crimes.
Oh, okay,
And
for
it's administered
violent
crimes, and it's administered by the state of Ohio out of Columbus.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you anyway.
All right, thanks for your call.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go to Will. Lil, how you doing?
Oh, fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
Okay, Dr. Odell, I heard you talk about children, you know, like they're committing suicide.
Now, children aren't committing suicide.
You said that taking drugs is like
Yes, if you're
committing
taking
suicide.
drugs, I mean, I think that's suicide.
Okay, now, 19 years ago, when I did volunteer work in the school, the teacher asked the children to bring books to school so she could read a story to them. One child brought a book to school about God. The teacher came to me and said she was sorry she could not mention the word God in school. She could not read this child's book. She asked me to take this child aside to a corner to read this book about God. The child was not able to participate in, book reading with the rest of the class. Another incident took place where a child was saying grace before she ate. She was taught that, and she was stopped by one of the teacher's aides.
Okay, so get to the point.
The point is, God no longer coexists with evolution, and evolution is survival of the fittest, and in survival of the fittest, there is no right or wrong. Kids going to school spend most of their waking hours at school with teachers who are not allowed to mention the word God. Doesn't make any difference. They have their own religious belief. Do you think this is causing kids not to have hope and faith because they cannot practice this in school like they used to, along with evolution?
All right. Thanks for your call.
Well, you know, it's a very complicated question. I would say that I think we need more spirituality among young people. For me, I grew up in a church. I grew up in a family that on Sunday, if you did not go to church, you could not go outside and play. You could not ask my mother to go outside and play on Sunday if you didn't go to Sunday school or church.
And I guarantee you a lot of the homicide cases, people who are committing the homicide probably didn't have a church background.
That's right. I think church helps to reinforce your family values. And for those kids that would slip through the cracks from their family, church picked that up. You know, somehow when I went to Sands, I don't know how they did it, when I went to Sands in elementary school, we would leave there and go over to Reverend McCracken's church on Mondays for church school. We got there, I think, once or twice a month when I was in elementary school. And that was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, it's just not the cool thing to do. Right. Now, what do you think about all these young kids committing these homicides? What is going on there? I mean, 13, 14, 15, it's like they don't care.
And they're cold.
Yeah.
Lincoln, they're cold. Because I've gone to the jails, I've gone to prison, I've gone to Hillcrest, I've gone to 2020, I've gone down to Justice Center. It's a shame because there's an element of young people in our community who truly feel that, hey, by the time I'm 22, I'm going to be dead or in jail. So that's my life expectancy. And they live that kind of life. Careless, they don't care about responsibility, they'll shoot you in a heartbeat. 74% of all the homicides, a handgun is used. However, what we've seen, the greatest use of weapons is in the suicide population. The greatest increase of using weapons. Right now, 52% of all suicides, a shotgun, rifle, or handgun is used. Wow. So we've seen people embrace the guns in the city. They're embracing the guns in the suburban areas as well.
Wow. Well, as always, you're a wealth of information, and we've got to get you back in here sometime. Got to get you on the radio show, too. I know those callers are brutal, but we'll get you in there. Thank you for joining me, and it's always good to have you here.
Always be with you,
Dr. Odell Owens, Hamilton County Coroner. We'll take a break and come back to Talk of the Town. Thank you, Dr. Owens. Back in a moment. We're back live. Lincoln Ware Live is the program, and it's time for the Talk of the Town. Coming up at noon today on It's 38, Sworn to Silence, starring Peter Coyote and Dabney Coleman. That should be a pretty good movie. That's at noon today, right here on It's 38. If you want to see a rebroadcast of this show, maybe you want somebody to see this part about the DNA, maybe you want them to hear some of the words of the coroner, tune in to WOTH TV, that's channel 25 at 8 o'clock tonight. That's WOTH, channel 25, 8 o'clock tonight. And following the rebroadcast of this show tonight, it's Windy City Romance. Make sure you check that out. And if you want to see this show in its entirety on the internet, just log on to WBQC.com. It's episode number 186. Episode number 186. It'll be on there tomorrow. And you can see the entire show on the internet, WBQC.com, and click on the episode number 186. And that phone number for the DNA testing discount, 881-4040. Tell them you heard about it on Channel 38, Lincoln Ware. We'll see you next Sunday morning right here at 10 o'clock for another exciting show on Lincoln Ware Live. See you then.